All right, let's dive into something pretty cool today. We're looking at the power of questions and how they can shape behavior. We'll be exploring Stephen Bartlett's book, The Diary of a CEO, and his Law 6, The Question Behavior Effect.
It's really fascinating how asking the right question can be so much more effective than just making a statement, when you're trying to motivate someone or even yourself.
Yeah, and Bartlett starts off with this great example. Ronald Reagan in the 1980 presidential debate against Jimmy Carter.
Oh, yeah. And what's interesting about that example is that polls actually had Carter ahead before the debate.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so that makes it even more interesting, right? It highlights how a well-placed question can actually shift perspectives and, even outcomes.
That is interesting. So what was the question again that Reagan used that supposedly turned things around?
Well, Reagan just asked the American people, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago?
Wow.
Yeah, it seems pretty straightforward, maybe even kind of obvious, but the real genius of it is that it's so simple, right?
I can see how that would really resonate with voters, especially if they were feeling the economic pinch at the time. It's like it makes them stop and actually think about their own lives instead of just listening to political jargon.
Exactly. It shifts the focus from all those abstract policy debates to something very personal. Like it forces a moment of self-assessment, and that can be so powerful.
Absolutely. But is this just some clever political trick?
Hmm.
Or is there, actual science behind this whole question behavior effect?
Well, Bartlett doesn't just rely on anecdotes. He cites research from 4 different U.S. universities. It spans over 40 years and includes over 100 studies.
Wow, so they really did their homework.
They did.
So what exactly did they find? Like, why are questions so powerful in influencing behavior?
What they found is that questions trigger a different kind of cognitive process compared to statements. A statement might just kind of wash over you, but a question demands a response. It makes you think critically, weigh your options, and actually engage with the topic more deeply.
So it's like it kind of forces you out of passive listening mode and into active thinking mode.
Yeah, exactly. And it goes even further. The research suggests that questions that require a yes or no answer are even more effective.
Hmm. Why is that?
Well, think about it. A yes/no question removes that, gray area of maybe or I'll try.
Yeah.
It makes you confront the desired action or behavior change head on, so there's less wiggle room for excuses.
I'm starting to see how useful this could be. But do you have a real-world example of how this actually works?
Sure, Bartlett uses this funny story about his own PA, Sophie. Every week she'd say, "Oh, I'm going to the gym on Monday," but she never actually went.
Oh, I've known a few Sophies in my time.
Right. And this really showed how open-ended questions like, "Are you going to the gym this week?" allow for that kind of, well, avoidance. But imagine if he had said something like, "Will you go to the gym tomorrow?"
Oh, I see.
It's a much more direct commitment, even if it's just a verbal one at that point.
It's almost like you're like trapping them with their own words, making it harder to back out later, right?
Yeah, in a sense. And there's a powerful psychological thing happening here. It's called cognitive dissonance.
Oh, okay. I think I've heard of that before, but can you explain that like in simple terms? For those of us who aren't psychology experts.
Sure. Imagine you see yourself as someone who's really environmentally conscious, but you keep forgetting your reusable bags when you go to the grocery store.
Oh yeah, guilty as charged.
Right. And so you end up using plastic bags, right? So there's this disconnect between what you believe and what you're actually doing. That's what cognitive dissonance is. It creates like a sense of discomfort.
I get it. It's like that nagging feeling you get when you know you're not really living up to your own standards.
Exactly. And that discomfort can actually push you to change.
Okay, so how does this cognitive dissonance thingy connect back to this question behavior effect we're talking about?
Well, when you ask someone a question that kind of highlights the gap between their aspirations and their actions, it just makes that cognitive dissonance stronger.
So like if you ask someone, will you eat healthier this week?
Mm.
And they say yes, but then keep eating junk food, they're going to feel even worse about it.
Exactly, because they're being confronted with the fact that their actions aren't matching up with what they said they wanted to do. It can be a really strong push to actually get them to change their behavior.
I can see how this would work on other people, but can you use this technique on yourself?
Definitely. Bartlett has this great story about using it on himself when he was running up this really tough hill. He just kept asking himself, will you keep running?
Wow.
And even though his body wanted to quit, answering yes, even just to himself, it helped him push through and make it to the top.
That's pretty amazing how just asking yourself a simple question can have such a big impact on your willpower. It's almost like you're, finding those hidden mental levers to make yourself do what you want to do.
Yeah, it's all about finding the right levers. And what's great about this technique is how versatile it is. You can use it for all sorts of things, like sticking to your workout routine, finishing that book you started ages ago, or even just getting out of bed on time.
Yeah, so instead of just saying, I should really start meditating, you could ask yourself, will I meditate for 10 minutes tomorrow morning?
Exactly. It's about taking the action you want and turning it into a clear, simple question that you can answer with a yes or no.
This is giving me so many ideas. I can see how this could be a real game changer for getting things done and achieving those goals you've been putting off. But what about using this, in a work setting? How can you use this question behavior effect to, like, influence people at work?
That's where things get really interesting. Say you're a manager and you want to encourage someone on your team to step up and take on more of a leadership role. Instead of just saying, you should think about leading this project, try asking, will you take the lead on this project?
Ah, okay. It's subtle, but it makes a big difference.
Right. Right. Instead of giving an order, you're inviting them to make a decision.
And they're more likely to say yes because you're implying that they have a choice.
Yeah, exactly. And it makes it a little harder for them to back out later because they've kind of made a public commitment.
I love this. It's like you're planting a seed and then using the right questions to help it grow.
That's a great way to put it. And remember, how you phrase the question is really important. Starting a question with will is a lot more powerful than can or could.
Right, because will you implies action and ownership, while can you just focuses on ability. Like,
Yeah.
will you rise to the challenge? Sounds way stronger than can you handle this?
Exactly. You're basically framing the question in a way that encourages them to be proactive.
So we've covered personal goals and work situations. What about using this in our relationships? Can the question behavior effect make us better communicators with our loved ones?
Absolutely. But this is where it's super important to be ethical. This technique can be really powerful, but you have to use it responsibly and respect the other person's freedom to choose.
Right, we're not trying to trick people into doing things they don't want to do.
Exactly. It's not about manipulation. It's about helping people make good choices that are in line with their values and what they want to achieve.
So instead of nagging your friend about their unhealthy habits, you could try asking, will you join me for a yoga class this week?
Perfect example. You're not forcing them, but you're giving them a chance to do something positive.
This makes me realize how much power we have to influence the people around us just by how we talk to them. It's like we have a responsibility to choose our words carefully and intentionally.
Absolutely. And the question behavior effect reminds us that sometimes the most effective way to motivate someone, including ourselves, is simply to ask the right questions.
It really is amazing how just changing the way you phrase something can completely change how you communicate and influence people.
It really is. And I think this question behavior effect shows us something even bigger about just how powerful questions are in general.
You're right. We're just bombarded with statements all the time, like ads, news headlines. They're all trying to tell us what to think. But a good question, it can cut through all that and make you really stop and think for yourself.
Exactly. Questions make you curious, they make you think critically, and you engage with things on a much deeper level. You're not just passively taking things in anymore, you're actively exploring them.
I'm starting to see this question behavior effect as more than just a tactic. It's almost a way of life, approaching the world with a sense of wonder and really wanting to understand things.
I love that. And just think about what would happen if everyone took this approach.
What do you mean?
Like, imagine workplaces where leaders ask more questions instead of just giving orders all the time.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Or classrooms where students are encouraged to question everything and really explore different viewpoints.
Or even just everyday conversations with your family and friends, where you actually listen to each other and ask questions that make you think.
Exactly. It could change our relationships, our communities, even our whole society.
It makes me think about all the areas in my own life where I feel stuck, like a goal I'm putting off or a problem at work. Maybe all I need is to ask myself different questions.
That's a really powerful realization, and that actually leads perfectly into a challenge for our listeners today.
Okay, I like it. Hit us with it.
Think about this. What are some really impactful questions you could start asking yourself or other people that will help you close that gap between your goals and actually taking action?
Ooh, I love that. So to everyone listening, that's your homework. Really think about that question. The answers might surprise you, And who knows where they might lead?
They really might.
Well said. And remember, the question behavior effect isn't just some mind trick. It's a way to engage with the world around you and with yourself in a way that's more curious, more thoughtful, and ultimately way more fulfilling. So go out there, ask those questions, and see what happens.